All right. Hey everyone, my name is Tanush Kakare.
And I'm Navya Alpha.
Welcome to EagleCast, an FRC podcast out of North Carolina.
We are both second-year members on the RoboEagles, Team 4828.
Today, our special guest is an alumnus from the team, Harshal Singh. Harshal is the CEO of a delivery startup named Troav and has been doing FIRST robotics since middle school.
Hi, Harshal. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Hi guys, it's great to meet you. It's great to be chatting with some people from the team that I so dearly love, and just super excited to chat, to learn a bit more about you guys, and also just kind of talk about how different my experience was with FRC than you guys. I feel like an old man right now, but no, it's really great to see kind of the growth that FRC has had, the growth that our team has had. And I've been following it ever since I graduated from high school, and it's just been a super fun kind of time reminiscing and then seeing just how much it's grown.
Perfect. So let's sort of get started with your beginning. So what first interested you in robotics, and why did you join the FIRST organization in particular?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's something that it kind of honestly happened by chance. One of my friends back in, what was it? It was in middle school, actually. He reached out to me kind of on a whim, and he was starting an FLL team. And I had only vaguely kind of learned about what FLL was from a distance through kind of by chance. But of course, I just wanted to try something new. I really wanted an excuse to hang out with my friends more often. So I, happily joined. And what happened was it ended up being that my basement was kind of the spot where we would have our FLL meetings. So literally every Friday for a year, or actually for 2 years, a bunch of guys would come down to my basement and we would just build robots for hours. And it was an amazing way to keep in touch with my friends, create even closer friendships with the people that were on my team, but also kind of opened me up to the world of robotics and of engineering and of competition. I like to always say that if I had different genetics, I would have loved to be an athlete, but I'm not so blessed. I'll say I'm an average height, average weight person, so could never really cut it in athletics. But robotics kind of was that outlet for me to really kind of embrace the best parts of competition, of going to events and competing with some of the brightest people around the world, to build some really, really cool things. And I still distinctly remember my first FLL competition. We all funneled into North Carolina School of Agriculture and Technology, and going into that stadium, we went down and we saw all these little boards where the FLL robots were zipping around, and I just remember how badly I wanted to really do well and show kind of show off to all the teams kind of all the things that we had learned in the year that we had been participating. So FLL was kind of my beginnings, and I think after the first season I knew it that I would be doing robotics for the rest of my life in some capacity. And kind of in high school, again, totally by chance, someone in the hallways that I just kind of vaguely knew mentioned that there was a robotics interest meeting happening in our physics teacher's room. And I wasn't in any clubs or anything like that, but I knew a little bit about robotics. So I told a bunch of my friends, actually all the same friends that did FLL with me, to come join, to come to the interest meeting to see what was up. And it was the funniest thing, actually, looking back on it. It was just a couple of people, not a single person in that room actually understood what we were getting ourselves into. No one really knew what FRC was except Mr. Nolte, who also happened to be there. And I remember that the first meeting, Mr. Nolte was kind of telling us about all the different intricacies about the robot, what all we had to build, and we were all kind of like, oh yeah, it can't be that hard. Like 6 weeks, that's plenty of time. We can just put this together. And then the meeting started happening. And I think one of our first meeting was actually kickoff day. So, I mean, I'm sure you guys have had the experience of having like a preseason and learning about things before we actually got into it. But no one, especially the person who kind of was the student that was in charge. It was new to all of us. So our first real meeting was at kickoff. And that's when we kind of, it dawned on us that this was a really, really big project that we were doing. But But since then, we were our first season we were working out of Mr. Nolte's garage, and we would eat dinner in his family's living room. And he was the most gracious mentor we could possibly have asked for, to open up his house to a bunch of like kids that didn't know what the hell they were doing, but just wanted to build cool things. And that's what we were. So we were in the garage almost every day, and we would just be building a robot that for our competition was shooting frisbees. And really kind of that whole process, I just fell more and more in love with the idea of competing with things that we are building, and just trying to build the coolest things. I found myself on the website Chief Delphi all the time in my free time. I'd find myself watching videos of other robots, comparing ourselves to some of the best teams out there. And yeah, just learned so much from the whole process that I've continued to apply throughout kind of my career now. And I like to say that of all the things I did in high school, robotics was that thing that definitely had like the most relevance to the work that I'm doing now, because it's a lot more tangible than writing answers to questions in an exam. It's actually putting real things together, and that's what, especially in my current job, that's what we do in the real world. So I take the skills from FRC and I apply them every single day to what I do.
Yeah. No, it's really interesting that you said that the way you sort of got into like for the first robotic competition, which is FRC, which for those of you guys who didn't know, which is the highest level of the first organization, is that you started off with FLL. I find that interesting because I myself also came from FLL, and I'm pretty sure Navya did as well. But for me, it was a little different. I mean, I sort of had mine like a bit more clear cut because my brother Tejas, he was on the robotics team. He was telling me all about it. Since 2017, he took me to a competition. He's like, "Look at this, bro! It's insane. It's so much fun. You're gonna learn so many new skills." And from that moment on, I was sort of hooked on the concept of building a robot in like 6 weeks time, and like just seeing like it compete against like other teams as well. Yeah, that was sort of one of the main reasons that I joined. Also, I just want to talk a little bit about when I joined. I know you were mentioning like, like no one knew what was happening. Obviously, that's because you were there at the very start of the team, which is a huge achievement. um, I couldn't even imagine what it was like back then. But when I joined, I had a bunch of people to, help teach me. I had the veteran members, I had the mentors, and it was really interesting to see how we came together as a family so that everyone could learn. Could you sort of like say like how did you sort of like develop your skills without having those sort of veteran members to help you out? Was it only the mentors there?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And actually, that's something that I forgot to mention, is that the reason, exactly like you said, the reason that people didn't really know what was going on is because it was our first year. It was actually our team president at the time. His name was Varun Mavila. He was interested in this space. He wanted to start a robotics team, and he took the initiative, and he kind of put everything together, did all the paperwork, and got the team going. But as kind of our first year, every single person in that room was learning, and and I'm sure Mr. Nolte will be the first to tell you too that even the experienced mentors who have had years of experience in engineering and science and building things and managing teams, every single year you learn something that you didn't know the year before. And our first robots were very different than the robots that I'm sure you guys are building right now, and we were all really just learning from each other. And it was a very different kind of experience, and I can very distinctly contrast kind of my first year, which was also my freshman year of high school, to my senior year of high school, when we had kind of 4 years under our belt, and we had a better sense of what was going on, what are the tried and true methods of getting things done. But kind of the most classic example was when we first started, me and my friend Akash, we were in charge of the bumpers, and it was our first year building everything, and we were given the task to make bumpers. And for those listening who haven't done for FRC before, bumpers are this kind of necessary task for every single robot, but they are it's a task that does require some precision, and it is kind of an arduous task. and Akash and I just completely butchered it. We had no kind of patience for the measurements that we needed to make. We made our first set of bumpers and they just straight up did not fit. And kind of this whole process is had become honestly a kind of a meme on the team. Honestly, is that the bumpers were way too precise. We're just not really doing the job. But again, it's something that kind of we through each other, through kind of the rest of the teammates, we even this kind of this one sub product of these bumpers, we took them apart, we built them again. I think it took like maybe 4 or 5 tries for it to make like a solid set of bumpers. But kind of every single person on the team was involved in that process, and not only just the team. We were kind of mentored by other FRC teams in the area, namely 3459 Team Pyrotech was, especially kind of in our first year, was a really big resource for us, gave us a lot of help, especially with the electronics, especially with some of those kind of aspects that when you finally get it, you kind of you don't realize all the things that have to happen for you to actually learn it that first time. But getting the kind of some of that institutional knowledge from experienced teams around the area was really helpful for us. I remember I spent an entire day at the Pyrotech workshop learning about electronics and learning like things that right now it almost feels silly that I had to sit down and learn. But these kind of aspects of institutional knowledge, they build up and they help you really kind of grow and pass those on to future members of your team and other teams around the area as well.
Yeah.
Like, just one thing I want to point out is you can definitely like see growth. Like, if you're not like taking Harshal's word for it immediately, you could see like on paper their growth like was shown as they made the world competition in 2016 itself. So like that's like just showing how they started and where they went a little bit from there.
Yeah, and kind of building off of that, we heard that you were on one of the first boards for RoboEagles. So how do you like what skills do you think that you learned from the team and how do you feel the team has evolved since then?
Absolutely, yeah, that's a great question, and I think leadership in high school is always it's always an experience that I think everyone should have. I think leadership is one of those experiences that you don't ever get from a textbook, you don't ever get from a class. You just have to do it. You have to practice. You have to mess up a couple of times, and I think that was my experience too. I think it was my junior year when I was one of the board members. And the responsibilities totally changed, rather than taking tasks and just kind of focusing on one task. Me and my other board members were kind of focused on looking at these bigger scale kind of applications, these bigger scale kind of projects that we wanted our entire team to focus on. So rather than working on one sub project of the robot or one part or one kind of aspect of the applications that we were submitting, but we had to kind of think about it from a higher level and think about entire robot strategy, entire kind of team strategy, how we wanted to structure our business outreach and our kind of our general outreach. And I think in terms of like things that I've learned, I think one aspect that was very strong in our kind of team, and something that I really kind of credit to the mentors, the coaches, and the rest of my teammates, was that it really did feel like a family. And I think there were a lot of aspects that were honestly like maybe unintentional that went into that, but it kind of the frequency of how often we met, the way the kind of the shared jokes, the community that was fostered in that workshop. And I think a lot of it is just that we were there so long that you have to be friends with the people that you're always around. But it's building kind of that culture is something that comes from everyone. It doesn't come from one person. And but just kind of knowing that this is a team, this is a family, and you have a shared goal and you have a shared mission. It makes all of it a lot easier. And so I think that aspect of our team really kind of grew over the years. And I think even kind of some of the details of organization, that's something that I definitely, especially when I was an early board member, I struggled a lot with, of how to plan and document things, because I was I was a bit too spontaneous for my own good, where I would rapidly jump from project to project, and I would it would be something that I had to be a lot better at. And even to this day, it's something that I'm still learning. With my company, there's a lot of kind of moving parts that have to come together in a lot of ways. And some of those lessons that I learned when I was on the RoboEagles, I'm very glad to have learned them then, because it's helped me be a much more organized, kind of effective leader in my current role.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that like one of the best parts of being on the Robo Eagles is how close the alumni and current team members are, and that we can always stay connected as a family. And then like Tanush and I, as board members, we've had to learn so many different organizational ways, especially since everything's online now. So yeah, you learn a lot. So
Yeah, absolutely. I can't even fathom kind of how you guys are doing it with COVID and everything. It's so hard. I mean,
yeah.
yeah, I my little sister, she's going to school, but just kind of hearing about how even online school is, it's tough. And my hat goes off to you guys for really kind of keeping the team together and keeping it thriving from what I'm hearing, even in these unprecedented times.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot more difficult. Robotics is definitely something I think that thrives off of like in-person interaction, because you actually have to physically build a robot. But with a game design challenge that we can do it all online, we're teaching our like newer members or members that want to learn something else. We're teaching them in CAD and programming.
Yeah, kind of building off of that. Once you went to Harvard, how did you remain connected with the first community?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one cool thing about college for me is that I actually ran into a couple of former FRC alums through some of the classes that I was taking from different teams across the country. And hearing about their teams, their build processes, it was always something new. And I learned a lot just kind of in brief conversations about our old high school robotics teams. And I think that was a cool way to kind of keep connected to teams that I would have never fathomed talking to, years from now. Teams as diverse as I'm forgetting the number, but Space Cookies, Bit Buckets. These are people that I met actually through the Harvard Robotics Club that were former members of FRC, and kind of just staying connected to the broader FRC community was really kind of cool to just get a high level sense of how FRC functions from team to team. When it came to my own team, I every year, whoever was most in charge, whoever was most kind of interested in the design elements of the team, I would always make sure to annoy them and bug them on Facebook Messenger, just to kind of pick their brain, see what the team was up to, so that I would have some context when I would binge watch, North Carolina district events, in the months of March and February.
That's so awesome. It's really cool how you've maintained your bond with the Robo Eagles. And I know that in the past couple summers you have run CAD workshops. So how did you learn CAD and what have you done with it?
Yeah, and so CAD workshops have been kind of there's so many things in college that I've learned through like classes and projects that I like slap myself and I think, wow, if I had only known this in high school, I would have been able to do this better or that better in FRC. So CAD workshops are really kind of the one of the biggest elements of that. I was actually so my freshman year of college that summer, I was doing a research project with some professors and some students from Harvard and from a Hong Kong university. And as kind of through that project, we got really familiar with CAD, more specifically Autodesk Fusion 360. And kind of a lot of those things that I learned, we were actually designing a electric vehicle for someone to sit in and ride on. It's not too dissimilar from an FRC robot, actually. And it's so funny. There were a lot of things that so one of the websites that we got our parts from was I just defaulted to go to vexrobotics.com and Andy Mark, and we got a lot of the things that end up on our actual car were products purchased from those websites. We and kind of that whole process, we had to design this robot completely from scratch. We had to design this car completely from scratch before we built it. So that gave me kind of that experience with CAD that then of course that made me realize if I had only known this a couple of years ago and kind of doing, and then it was just a natural step where me and my friend Ibrahim, another RoboEagles alum, we had both done a lot of CAD in college, and we just wanted to make sure that everyone on the RoboEagles could also get those pieces of information that we wish we had known when we were on the team.
Yeah, definitely. I know you mentioned you were talking about your electric car. We went onto your website and we saw that that was like a big eye opener. Like, oh my God, personalized electric vehicle. So also we saw that you ended up in Hong Kong to manufacture somehow.
Yeah.
like, could you sort of go over like what the process was like of building that? Where did you get the idea? What do you have like plans for it in the future?
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. So it was actually it was a project, it was a research project that I was doing with kind of these professors, but it was rather than doing kind of a research, a project with some kind of research goal. This was really kind of an open-ended, wide range project that we were kind of tasked with collaborating with students from Harvard and students from HKUST, which is Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. It was a phenomenal experience, and I think to this day it's one of my favorite summers ever because we were flown out to Hong Kong. We stayed there for a month, and this entire month actually we were not in a lab or anything like that. And for this month, we had to do our research. We had to do all the calculations that were necessary to pick the right motors, pick the right parts for our car, and also design it completely. So it was kind of a nice way of thinking about the whole design process where because we couldn't even build it if we wanted to. We had to do all of our planning in CAD and do it all kind of virtually in the same way that big organizations do their mechanical processes. It was really kind of new experience, especially when we come from kind of that 6-week crunch time of building things really fast, just as fast as you possibly can. Although actually, I guess you guys don't have the 6-week build time anymore, but that's a later topic, I guess. But yeah, kind of going from that, we have to design everything, and then once we landed back in Boston for another month, that's when we started building, putting everything together, and doing, all the troubleshooting that ends up happening in these kind of things. And it was just a super fun experience because in the mornings we were doing CAD, we were doing design, and in the evenings we would go out and explore the city. Just learn more from also the kind of the students, the peers that we were working with, and it was just a phenomenal experience. Meeting new people, meeting people from a completely different part of the world. We're working together on a project, and at the end we actually did get our car to move. And one of the cool aspects that we integrated into our car was swerve drive, which is a kind of a really kind of a very FRC-esque term to describe a wheel that can be powered and also steered independently of any other wheel, which has the theoretical ability to have you drive in any single direction. And building that, the back of of our car looked very much like an FRC robot because it had that swerve drive built into it. But really kind of putting it all together was just a ton of fun. And Hong Kong was such a incredible place to kind of be for a month and soak in.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So as we've gone over, clearly your experience within the engineering field, like from like your bumpers, as you stated, all the way up to the car and your own business. So sort of for viewers and anyone else, like what is your advice for people who are also looking for a future in STEM like you did?
I think my advice for anyone is to just build, and I think just do it. And it doesn't have to be a physical thing. It doesn't have to be a robot or even like a piece of code. It can be a book. It can be a nonprofit. It can be really anything. But I think a lot of our time in school is spent learning, and a lot of time after school, if you I guess for lack of a better term, if you spend that time doing, you are getting kind of the best of both your worlds. And I think a lot of times we just kind of a lot of times I often find myself, whenever I'm in kind of a rut, I realize that I just haven't been using the creative parts of my brain for anything. And it doesn't, I think STEM or not STEM, just like thinking about creative applications of the stuff that you're learning is always a very worthwhile exercise. And it can turn small ideas or small kind of thoughts that you have before falling asleep into really cool projects that you're proud of, that are pushing kind of the bounds of what you see. And I think it's a really cool kind of phenomenon that's happened recently, is kind of this idea of kind of the creative economy, where people are kind of almost, it's almost like a historical trend. People are moving away from mass manufactured things and products, but they want people to be building smaller things, and tools like the 3D printer and websites like Etsy, they've enabled people to build things on more personal levels, but also build things for themselves and just make things. And I think my advice is to just spend less time planning and just spend more time doing. I think the roadblocks that you run into are are always more valuable than the the broad processes that you might learn about in the classroom setting. So any small idea that you might have, no matter how small, if you just build it, your mind will keep thinking up newer and cooler things.
Yeah, I think the best part about being on a robotics team in high school is like you get that chance to build, to learn, and like apply whatever you're learning at school.
Mhm.
And we saw that you're interested in AI and machine learning concepts like self-driving cars. So,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on these and like the future?
Yeah, no, I'm super glad you asked this. I think self-driving cars are like my bit and my thing. I love talking about them, and I think these kind of automated processes have such a big chance of disrupting the whole world. And the way I see it, I think self-driving cars are poised to be the most impactful thing in the world since the personal computer. And I think kind of the entire way that we think about moving things, moving people, logistics, transportation will be completely changed when we have the ability to have a transportation system that's more specialized, a transportation system that's more built for different use cases, and one that utilizes kind of this immense infrastructure that we already have. Our highway system is incredible. Our road system is incredible. And kind of unlocking that way of making that transportation more personable, more kind of more individual, and also specialized is incomprehensible. I mean, the way I see it is the short-term airline flight can be replaced by cars that are specialized, built for long distance travel, that have the amenities that you want in an overnight stay. Where if you want to go from Boston to New York, which is one of the most popular flights in the country, you can make that flight in 3 hours, or you can make that drive in 4 hours, but have that drive be in a much more comfortable environment, have that drive be overnight, and have that drive be completely convenient, where it takes you from door to door. You can have deliveries of products happen from these self-driving cars rather than going to the store yourself. I mean, it'll completely change the way that we interact with kind of the transportation networks around us, and the logistics networks around us. And just kind of the progress that's been made in these spaces is phenomenal. And I mean, it's hard to tell. I mean, who knows which company will make the de facto self-driving car, but I do know that cities will buy these cars in mass to replace bus systems. I know that individuals and if a plane company is very forward thinking, plane companies will buy these cars and kind of anticipate the future of long distance travel. Delivery companies, I mean, so many of the gig companies are based on the idea of self-driving cars really kind of making transport more accessible to more people. So I have a lot of ideas on self-driving cars. I think it's just super exciting, and I think it's coming sooner than we might even realize. Where we have self-driving, we have self-driving trucks already out there, making, driving through highways, and it's kind of crazy to think about. But yeah, I mean, the whole landscape will look a lot different when we don't need one individual who has a license, who has to be wide awake every single second of a transportation system to happen. Yeah, it's just exciting to think about, and something that definitely keeps me up at night is how can my company utilize this technology to the best ability? How will the world look like when these become more commonplace? And how can it mess up? What are ways where self-driving cars will leave us less connected, less kind of accessible to the people around us? It's crazy to think about.
Yeah. So, like I do speech and debate, and I do informative, so it's like a 10-minute speech. So each year you have to pick your own topic of choice. And last year my topic was actually autonomous cars, and which is actually really interesting. So we have some like similar interests here. But one point that I pulled from my research was that obviously, since it's a robot, an autonomous car is never going to be like 100% flawless. It's the maximum it can get is to 99%, which at that point is going to be usable. So for someone that's like more experienced and someone that's done a lot of research, on self-driving cars, could you give us like an estimate of like when we could actually reach that 99%, when it's actually reasonable?
It's tough, and I'm by no means an expert on, especially on that side of it. I have no idea when it could happen, but really the metric here is not even 100%. It just has to be more safe than a human being, and human beings are notoriously bad at driving. So it's a benchmark that that is A, attainable, but B, also it will save lives. And it's a benchmark where robots don't get tired, robots don't get drowsy, robots don't drink and drive, robots don't do the things that humans can do to make these make roads less safe. So I think it's coming sooner than we might all think. I think there's a lot of things to think about, a lot of kind of ways that it'll integrate into cities, integrate into other technology that's in cities or soon to come to cities. Um, but I mean, the fact that self-driving trucks are already out there, I think there will be very soon kind of fleets of cars that don't transport people yet, but transport products autonomously, and even that will have kind of crazy implications on the way that we interact with supermarkets and the way that we interact with groceries and retail in general. It's almost like who knows? I mean, I see these grocery delivery autonomous vehicles as maybe the return of the ice cream truck, where we have these kind of roving fleets of cars that have product ready for you to be purchased, and it's because autonomous cars can drive forever, they can cover a lot more area, and they can make these almost ice cream truck-esque deliveries of products that are more relevant. I mean, the milkman hasn't been around for I guess 100 years or so, but it could be back in the form of a milk delivery truck.
Yeah, for sure. So I know you talked about how you started your own company, Trove, and how it's like a delivery service and whatnot. So could you sort of like talk about what your plans for that is, and what it's like really being a young entrepreneur?
It's a ton of fun, and I think being a young entrepreneur, I always like to say that startups are the highs are very high and the lows are very low. You feel so invested in your product, it becomes part of your identity. When you have good days with your company, and especially as a young entrepreneur, you feel on top of the world. And it's not a feeling that you really easily get when you're when it's a project that is kind of coming from somewhere else, or where you're working for a kind of larger company. That sense of ownership is really kind of important. And um and especially for me, it's something that now that I've had a taste of this, I know that this is kind of what I want to do. But that being said, when days are tough, when something doesn't go as well as you'd hoped, you have to really kind of dig deep and figure out why these problems are happening and how to solve them, because in the end, kind of the buck stops at you. And I think it's just a process that it is very engrossing, and it kind of becomes such an integral part of your life, and it becomes all you think about. But to be completely honest, it was almost the same way with me for my FRC team. I mean, in dull times in classes, I would go on my phone and I'd go to chiefdelphi.com, and that kind of obsession is something that because I had that obsession, it was a very natural kind of segue into once I had a project that I really was really interested in, I found myself obsessing over. I just wanted to kind of take it to the next level and make it a real company, and kind of see what I could do with that. And it's been a lot of fun, and kind of this whole process, this whole process of having an idea. Our idea started out as just kind of a conversation between me and my co-founder of like, what if delivery was so fast? What if it was like 5 minutes fast? And then thinking about how that could happen, thinking about what needs to happen to make these deliveries really fast, and then actually getting our boots on the ground, talking to drivers, talking to customers, talking to suppliers, and making these deliveries really insanely fast has been kind of this crazy whirlwind of an experience. But the thing that keeps drawing me back to it, and the thing that always makes me want to do this more than anything else, is that I know that I have a lot of pride with this project, and I really want to see it through. And I know that it has the potential to really kind of change the way that we see the world, and in a way that I think is inevitable. And kind of just knowing that the mission is to help people get things faster and better and quicker is driving me, is just what always gets me going, and what makes me want to take this all the way to the end. And yeah, and it's definitely fun. And so it's a lot of the things that I've learned from FRC have helped me through this process. Thinking about these projects on a macro scale where you do have ownership is not an experience that most people have in high school, especially. And a lot of young entrepreneurs, they it's hard to go from that transition from sitting in a classroom and knowing exactly what exactly the action items are that you have to do, to then, the next day defining those action items, defining what you want to achieve, and then coming up with a plan to achieve that. It's a totally different thing. And I think FRC gives kind of all of us that exposure from a very young age. And it's helped me a ton. And I definitely think that the skills that you get from FRC are very applicable. I think young entrepreneurship, though, I think everyone should try it. I think everyone should dabble in doing a project. I like to say that I think everyone at some point in their life should make it a goal to make $1 from the internet. And I guarantee you that $1, it'll take hours and hours and hours to make that first dollar, but you'll feel like a champion. And I think you learn a lot. And I think setting that goal, I'm encouraging the both of you to definitely try that. But just making $1 out of the internet is a cool project, and you learn a lot on the way. And I remember the first dollar that I ever made from the internet, and it's cool, and it's a rush that is a fun rush to chase.
Yeah. For anyone that's in, are you only operating in the Boston area right now?
Yes, right now we're only in Boston.
Do you have like an Instagram handle or something for the company? You can shout that out.
Absolutely. Our Instagram is at gettroav, TROAV. We also have a Facebook page, and both these pages, if you're in the Boston area, you can check out more about our projects. And if you're not in the Boston area, you can go to our website, troav.com, and ask to sign up to be that next city that we expand to. We're just looking to grow. Yeah, and right now it's such a fun time in our company because every day we're thinking about these brand new challenges, and every day is something different. We're really, one day we'll go from talking to a supplier to the next day we'll go to designing an ad. Every day is something new, and keeps us fresh, keeps us nimble.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Harshal. We had a great time talking to you.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Yeah, no problem. And thanks to you all for tuning in to today's episode of EagleCast.